What is up, guys? It's your boy, Rick the Grandmaster Grinder Cactus, and today, Grandmaster Nightfalls are finally back on the menu for Season of the Haunted within Destiny 2. They are going to be where you get those sweet Adept Nightfall weapons as well as those awesome resources like golf balls. And we're starting off with a doozy with the Proving Grounds Strike, generally considered to be one of the hardest Grandmasters in the game, but in this video, we're going to be going over 3 separate loadouts for Titan, Warlock, and Hunter, as well as a bunch of tips for the strike itself to make your Grandmaster experience as easy as possible and hopefully get you that Conqueror title. So, first things first, let's talk about these loadouts. Now, I was playing a Titan, and honestly, I was just using my Lorely Splendor build. So I pretty much did a video specifically on that, and it did transmit well into a Grandmaster setting. Essentially, you're using a bunch of things to improve, Scorch and all of that stuff. Powered melees give you Radiance. Hammer is really good for that because you don't need to get up close. And then you're using the Lorely Splendor Helm to instantly drop, as long as you have a full class ability, a Sunspot, and that's going to heal you. Very, very good. And of course, you want to run 100 Resilience for that PvE damage resistance. Now, in terms of weapons, I was using the new purpose. I did a video specifically on this thing a couple days ago because this is the only kinetic slot weapon in the game. Technically it's stasis, but it can get adaptive munitions. So I was able to deal with every single type of enemy shield I encountered, no problem, and because it's a pulse rifle, I was also able to effectively deal with barrier champions. Next up, I was using an explosive personality, just a really good solar grenade launcher. You do have acute solar burn for this Nightfall, so you want to be using as many solar weapons and abilities as possible for that 25% increase in damage. Then I'm using the Galahorn, absolutely fantastic, so good for clearing ads, damaging bosses, goinking champions, just a really good weapon overall. However, I do want to mention, you can also consider, this is going to sound crazy, but the Skyburner's Oath. I think this is super slept on, and I've actually used this thing in previous times the Proving Grounds was a Grandmaster, and it's actually fantastic. So it's going to do bonus damage to Cabal. It's going to go through Phalanx shields and those big dome shields so you can shoot the generators while being outside them, and it was buffed this season and will now apply Scorch to targets just for hip firing them, so a pretty effective package overall. And of course, it's a scout rifle, so you could put on unstoppable stunning rounds. But moving on from there, the mods I'm going to be using here are Well of Life for heals, Elemental Ordnance for well production, Font of Might for more damage. Wrath of Rasputin's actually pretty free if you're using grenade launchers. Then Explosive Well Maker as my main well production, and also put on Revitalizing Blast. Stunning a champion causes it to ignite and clears your shield stun. So anytime you bust down a barrier shield or you stun an unstoppable, you will cause an ignite explosion. And guys, as you can see right here, it works very well with stasis, which we're going to go over that build in a second, because you can kind of constantly stun those frozen enemies and it's going to trigger ignite over and over and over again, and we were able to absolutely melt these champions because of it. But next up we have a Hunter, and they're actually using a Blade Barrage with Knock 'em Down and On Your Mark. You can see the fragments right here, but importantly, the featured exotic is actually the Shards of Galanar. Again, did a video on this build. This is fantastic with Knock 'em Down, pretty much always giving you 50% of your Blade Barrage back, and in the background gameplay there was a lot of Blade Barrages being used. So, moving on from there, for the weapons, we're going with the good old Arbalest to deal with shields and barrier champions. Then, a highlight here was actually the Staccato 46. This solar scout rifle can get explosive payload. It's the only one that can. This is an unbelievably good perk. It's going to give you like 10 to 15% more damage against PvE enemies all the time. Gives you infinite range for the explosive damage, and you can combine that with shoot to loot. So you can be absolutely doming enemies with the staccato, with explosive, and also replenishing your heavy and your special without having to move out of cover, which is very, very useful in a Grandmaster. And we're ending things off with a God Roll Cataclysmic with fourth times and bait and switch. However, Focus Fury would also be just as good here. In terms of mods, we've got Elemental Light, which definitely does come up with Shards of Galanor. We've got Melee Wellmaker, because you're actually able to get your melee back constantly. However, this is a little bit more meant for Nightmare Containment, and you may want to actually use elemental armaments here, but after that we have Seeking Wells, which is great for Grandmasters. If you produce a well, sometimes you're not able to go out of cover and get it, and then Bountiful Wells on top of that for just more well production. Of course, guys, really the reason we're using this is Classy Restoration is busted right now, and this is going to help you survive so darn much, and we're using another Revitalizing Blast here. Then our last loadout here for the Warlock is going to be Stasis. Stasis Warlock is absolutely busted right now, especially with the Bleak Watcher Stasis turrets combined with Glacial Harvest to produce so many Stasis shards. Then the featured exotic is going to be the Osmiancy Gloves, giving you a second Cold Snap Grenade, which does mean 2 Bleak Watcher Stasis turrets, and both can be up at the same time. Just insane. More realistically, it's used so that when one goes down, you pop the other one. When that one goes down, you'll have another one recharged, so you have constant stasis turrets. Weaponry, Witherhoard, an absolute classic, unbelievable. The Staccato, again, same roll, was fantastic, and another same Cataclysmic roll as well. But looking at the mods here, firstly, we have Shield Break Charge, but then what brings this build all together is Elemental Shards, turning those Stasis Shards into Stasis Elemental Wells, essentially. And then, because of that, we're able to use things like Protective Light. So if you're charged with Light, you get a damage resistance, not that much, 10%, but better than nothing. And then we're using Elemental Charge. So all those Stasis Shards are triggering Elemental Charge, always charged with light, always getting that damage resistance, and also a striking light here. Not for the main part, but for the secondary ability, which, as you can see, gives you extra damage resistance while you're sprinting. Very slept on mod here, very, very good. But guys, let's move on from there to the strike itself. So when you start things off, you actually want to hop on your Sparrow and veer hard left. As you can see, you can skip by all of these enemies and get to this kind of top overlook, and then look a little bit to the right and you will see an unstoppable champion. Make sure to deal with that guy, and then after that, there's going to be a barrier champion kind of right in front of you, and then you're just kind of keeping to this left outlook and killing enemies as you move along. Eventually the boss is going to spawn, so you're going to have to whittle that guy down. But remember that when you do trigger him to go to the middle and pop his shield, enemies are going to spawn out of this far left doorway, so just be prepared for that. Now this guy in his shield can be a bit tricky. Again, if you have a Skyburner's Oath, you can shoot right through it to the generator and just pick away at it. It's going to take a while, but you'll be able to take it down. But another tip here, guys, is as you can see, if you stand just right between him and the generator, he actually can't hit you. He can only just shoot the generator, and then you have all the time in the world and complete safety to take it down. But moving on from there, eventually you're going to get to this room here, and this is definitely one of the harder parts of this strike. There's going to be a lot of enemies and pretty limited cover. I like going to this left spot here behind this whatever piece of cover, and really just hiding behind here will absorb most incoming enemy fire. However, there are going to be a lot of splash damage enemies here, especially when the tanks spawn, and definitely a shot can slip behind the cover and kill your entire team. So really you want to be just spread out enough to prevent that from happening. Most of the time, the tank shots will just hit the front of the cover and do nothing. It's those weird ones that slip behind that you got to watch out for. So as long as like one person survives, as you can see, you can get your teammates up still in relative safety. You just don't want to clump too much together. Also, from this position, you can work away at approaching enemies from the left and right. And generally when a champion is kind of approaching you on either one of those sides, you want to get your team focus fire down those champions if you see them kind of getting closer, again on the right or the left. But honestly, with acute solar burn and stuff like the Gallahorn and Cataclysmics, you're actually capable of taking down not only champions, but those tanks really darn fast. Like, those tanks, spawn, yeet a couple Gallahorn rounds at it, shoot it a few times with those linears, it's going to be dead in seconds. Oh, and one last quick tip for this room. For the scions that drive those Cabal vehicles, don't shoot the scions, shoot the vehicle itself, because when that explodes, the scions just die. Alright, but eventually, and hopefully you're going to get through that room, and the next tip I have for you guys involves this section here, where you have to deposit the power cores. Guys, make sure to pick up the power core, and then just drop it. Right, because that is going to cause doors to open up, enemies to spawn, and you don't want to be either letting your teammates fight while you're sitting there with a power core, or, predisposed with it. You want to drop it, forget about it, you can go get it later. Now spend time killing all the enemies, and then when they're all dead, send someone back to go and get the power core. But when you do, make sure you have teammates standing away, because the rocks that bounce through here can actually kill you. So you don't want to have all three people jumping together and they all get killed by the same rock. So send one guy at a time just in case. But once you're done that part and have deposited the final core, guys, these doors are going to open up and a bunch of enemies are going to come through. Make sure to use your supers if you have them on these guys. And the reason being is because once you kill these guys, which is going to be a lot easier if you pop your supers, just before the boss fight, as you can see, you actually have to begin the rite of proving, and that is going to get you your full super back. So you definitely don't want to go to the rite of proving with a full super unless it's something like a bubble or a well. You can actually pop those and then activate the rite of proving and get those back immediately, so you can be standing in them during the first part of this boss fight, which is another strategy. But just remember, that's going to give you your super back. Now, as for the boss, thankfully her main attack is actually Void instead of Solar, so you might be able to survive a hit with it, but that does mean you really want to shoot down these solar balls she emits as quickly as possible, guys. However, this is really, really important. This is probably like the most important factor in your success in this room. She has limited amounts of these solar balls. So eventually, if you just kind of whittle her down and do what we're doing in the background gameplay and just kind of let her expend all of these attacks, as you can see, they're just going to stop and she's going to not shoot any more solar balls. It's at that point you want to continue. But while you're kind of waiting for that to happen, you are going to have two unstopped champions in the first 2/3 of her health. And really important, guys, they will teleport. Yeah, they will literally teleport right in front of you, so you have to be aware of that. When she initially shields up, just be expecting unstopped champions to literally teleport in front of you. I'm telling you, it will happen. It's been happening for years now, and nothing's happened about it. So, if you can stun them with the scout rifles from far away and kill them quickly, that's fantastic. Just keep your guard up. But once those solar balls are done, once those champs are dealt with, you're going to have this awkward phase where the boss is inside the shield. Really, you just kind of want to distract her. Be behind cover, poke your head out, shoot kind of near her, get her to face one teammate while the other ones slip inside the shield, pop an arbalest shot or whatever at the generator, and you can take it down pretty darn fast. Now, once the shield goes down, a bunch more enemies are going to spawn, so if you are running like a Loadouts Titan, this is a great time to pop your hammers and deal with those guys just to get them off your back. Then it's time to melt the boss. Once she goes up into a shield, then you have two more unstopped champions, and things get a little bit interesting for the last phase of the boss. So the final third of her health, as you can see, she's at the very back of the map now. So what you can do is you can break the shield and run back to where you were holding out. And this puts some distance between you and the boss. And if you have a lot of heavy, this might be the strat you want to use, because you can just melt the boss and ignore the enemies and still get platinum no problem. Because I don't think champions spawn on this final third of health. At least they didn't for us. But instead, what you may want to do is what we do in the background gameplay, which is stay at the back where the boss actually is, just quickly melt that first spawning wave of ads, stuff like Wither Horde where they're all jumping to is going to kill them in no trouble at all, and then actually just head back and forth through this little tunnel here to just rope-a-dope the boss, right? If the boss goes to one side, do some damage, and then they do the solar attack, just go through the tunnel. Going through the tunnel is pretty much going to break the tracking on those solar balls. They'll all just hit the top of the tunnel, and you can usually come out the other side and start damaging the boss from the other side. And then when she pushes to the other side, you go right back, right? And you just keep going back and forth and whittling down the boss, and it is a lot safer than being anywhere else in this arena where you really have no cover and the boss is just chasing right to you, right? So guys, that is going to be really where you kill the boss and end the strike, and hopefully you get that platinum rating and you get this Grandmaster done. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, found it informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at RickCacus, that is linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.